Hello there. Thank you for taking a moment to watch this video. And on this particular training, we're going to continue talking about webhooks. And more specifically, we're going to talk about disposition-specific webhooks. We're going to talk about why you might want to consider disposition-specific webhooks as opposed to just a general call and dial session webhook. You see, if you add the call and dial session webhook, that applies across every disposition, which you may or may not want. But every disposition in your dial session will trigger information to be sent from PhoneBurner to that endpoint, to that webhook URL. However, this only affects your account. So if you're managing a team account, you would need to go and apply this webhook URL across every team member's account. You'd have to log in as them and add this webhook URL here. Not a huge deal, but it does take time to do that. And as you add more and more team members to your account, you'll have to remember to do that each and every time. However, if you apply it to a disposition, let's jump over to the dispositions page here. And let's take, for example, the live answer set. And let's edit the booked appointment button. You'll see that every disposition has a webhook option on it. So again, there's a couple reasons you might want to consider this. Maybe you don't want to log every call in your external system. Or maybe you want to process specific calls different than other calls, and you don't want to have to create filters to filter out specific call statuses. And then one other reason is dispositions can be shared. So you can create a standard set of dispositions at the admin level and share those dispositions with your team. That makes it a lot easier for you to create a simple process that everyone will follow, and you can add and remove seats at any time without having to worry whether or not the calls are going to get logged appropriately in your external system. So let's take advantage of this. I'm going to jump back over to Zapier, again using Zapier as my example. You don't have to use Zapier yourself. I'm just using Zapier in this training. So we're going to create a new Zap. I'm going to name this Zap Booked Appointment, because I'm going to assign this specifically to my booked appointment disposition. It is going to be a webhook Zap. The event is going to be a catch hook. Again, I'm not going to do anything here. And now we need to test this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to paste it into the webhook spot on the disposition. Now we're ready to test. So let's jump over to contacts. Let's select our contacts and begin a dial session. Again, this webhook is only going to apply on that booked appointment disposition. So I need to click live answer, end the call, and booked appointment. Now let's go ahead and pause that. Let's jump back over to Zapier. Click the test trigger button. And we should see information over here, at least soon. So let's go ahead and click that one more time. There we go. Now we have the details from PhoneBurner in Zapier. And we can continue on. So now what are we going to do with this? Of course, in my training, I'm using Google Sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search for Google Sheets. And before I continue any further down the Zapier path, let's jump over to my Google Sheet and let's create a new tab. Let's go ahead and rename this to Booked Appointment. And then what kind of information do we want to capture? I can, of course, copy and paste from here. You don't have to create new sheets every time. I'm just doing new sheets to illustrate the differences between each of these, right? So anyway, I'm, of course, creating a new sheet. And now I need to take the information that's being captured on that webhook and start to feed it into this Google Sheet. So let's jump back over to Zapier. We're going to create a new spreadsheet row. Continue. Choose my account. Continue. Choose my drive. Choose my spreadsheet. And choose my worksheet. Now I just need to start mapping data. So let's go ahead and take contact name. So we're going to take contact first name, contact last name, caller name, agent first name, agent last name, phone number. Take contact phone, contact ID, contact user ID, result. What was the outcome of the call? What's the length of the call? Was it connected? In this case, it was connected. And then the call recording. All right. And of course, there's lots of other pieces of information, including custom fields that we could capture and update our Google spreadsheet with. But I'm not going to dive into all of those nitty-gritty details here. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And let's test the action. Now, if we jump over here to our webhook testing, we should see that that has been logged. But I also want to point out that when you add a specific webhook URL to a specific disposition, we will no longer be sending it to the dial session webhook URL. So it's one or the other. And I'll illustrate that right now. Let's jump back over to Zapier. Let's go ahead and publish this. Let's turn this on. So now I have both of these apps running, right? So once this is on, let's go ahead and exit out of here. And you'll see my booked appointment and call end. Both of those are on. They're both active. Now let's go back to our dial session. And let's call Kevin. So let's call him. Live answer, have our conversation, blah, 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 talk, talk, talk. We can add and update our notes. Notes can also be captured with the webhook URL. And let's go ahead and click booked appointment. And let's pause that. Now let's jump back over to our sheet. We'll see that the call end hasn't been updated. Our call begin, these have been updating, right? Call end didn't update, but booked did, right? So Kevin is not here, he is here. So if I still wanted to make sure that he was on the call end sheet, I would need to update my Zap to not only update the booked appointment tab, but to also update my call end tab. So if I want to go into two different places, I can do that with my Zap. But of course, I'm not going to dig into all of that. That's totally up to you whether or not you want to do something like that. Whether you're using Zapier or not, you need to decide what you're doing with all of the information. I just want to make sure you understand how this is working. Now, the other piece to this that I want to point out, let me go ahead and end this dial session that we have running here. Let's go ahead and end that. Get out of that session. Now let's jump over to one of our team members. Let's log in as Heather. So remember what I was saying, the call end dial session webhook, if we go to the integrations in Heather's account and I go to the webhooks page, you'll see that she doesn't have a call end webhook. So unless I add it here, she doesn't have it. But if I go to the dial session settings and dispositions, and I go to that master set, this shared set right here, we'll see booked appointment does have a webhook URL on it. So if Heather were to start a dial session, let's go ahead and start a dial session. Let's test this real quick. Should work. Let's call the Green Lantern. Make sure we're using the correct live answer set. Let's say the Green Lantern answers, we have our conversation, we add our notes, do what we need to do. When we're done talking to them, we end the call, and then we click that booked appointment button, right? Then we're off, we move on. If we set up everything correctly, we should see that activity logged, and there you go. We see that activity was logged through our Zap. without having to go in and edit any settings in Heather's account. And as you can see here, it was logged as Heather being the caller. Anyway, thank you for taking a moment to watch this video. I hope this helps you and your team get more done using the power of PhoneBurner. Thanks again, and happy dialing.